Welcome to my presentation for Assessment Task 1 in the ED 5953 subject, The Arts for Primary Teachers. My research question is targeted at exploring cultural history and themes in the arts and linking learning opportunities for Indigenous students in primary school settings. The research question is, does the arts influence learning amongst Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students? Let's firstly look at the historical aspects of traditional classroom settings and educational experiences for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students in Australia. It is well documented that Indigenous students experience a number of learning difficulties as a result of exclusion, language barriers, a lack of cultural appropriate pedagogical approaches to teaching and learning, deprivation of access to education, and a lack of resources, particularly in rural and remote areas. These findings are evidenced in the Overcoming Indigenous Disadvantage report, which makes reference to the inadequacies in the education system when it comes to Indigenous students achieving the national minimum standards for reading, writing and numeracy. This forms the basis for my research question, as I hypothesized that by engaging students appropriately in the arts, and more specifically, arts with an Indigenous focus, we are likely to see an improvement in engagement and learning. Moving on to discussing the arts in primary schools education, it is said that the arts is multifaceted as it contributes to a variety of aspects with respect to the learning and development of our students. Such benefits include, but aren't limited to, the promotion of creative thinking and innovation, a medium for students to engage in self-expression, proven to effectively develop far more in-depth approaches to critical thinking and thought processes, a format in which students may express how they understand a particular concept, as well as contributing to the development of fine motor skills. Contrasting between the gaps that currently exist in education for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students and some of the evidence-based outcomes that can be achieved through the teaching and learning of the arts, there is a clear opportunity to explore how the arts may be used to enrich learning opportunities for Indigenous students. So let's look more closely at the evidence base and pedagogy in the arts. While studies show relationships and connections between the arts and learning, few focus on why learning in and through the arts brings about these improvements. A gentleman by the name of Galton explored the pedagogy used by successful arts educators in bringing about transformations in students' attitudes to learning, particularly with respect to disaffected students with an anti-school disposition. Results indicated that one of the factors which influence students' motivation is the culture in which the learning is situated. That is, the equal power relationship that is established between the educator and the students, which emphasize students as co-workers and co-learners. This approach to scaffolding students in art-based activities was achieved through the incorporation of extra time and space for students to express their ideas. In this area of research, arts educators were not constrained by curriculum deadlines as teachers usually are. The artists see students' responses to tasks as emotional rather than cerebral, as there is no fear of failure, which confirms for students a safe learning environment. The artists offer feedback that extends students' ideas rather than offering corrections as a teacher may traditionally exhibit. A lot can be learned through this approach for me personally, as a future primary school teacher, and as I continue to develop my personal philosophy to practice in a professional setting. The notion of avoiding the reliance of a right and wrong way of doing things and putting students in the driver's seat, so to speak, is one that I think would resonate with disadvantaged students, such as those of Indigenous heritage. Being mindful, however, that arts education is a key learning area within the Australian curriculum and is guided through the Australian Curriculum Assessment and Reporting Authority, ACARA does provide some general guidelines for teachers with respect to arts education, which does align with the aforementioned research. Student encouragement and feedback is emphasized as a positive way to promote effective learning amongst students. The connotations associated with creativity and innovation is reinforced as a focal point in arts education. It is also recommended that teachers be mindful in the use of particular language with respect to terms such as talented. Of greater importance is an acknowledgement of how well students dance, paint, sing, draw, or perform, and how creativity and expression is the focal point, rather than the concept of artistic talent. Merging what we know the research indicates, as well as the expectation to embed the arts through the Australian curriculum, together with the overarching research question of does arts education improve learning opportunities for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students, we can draw the following conclusions. We know Indigenous students are more likely to disengage from learning opportunities. The research strongly advocates for more traditional and culturally explicit approaches to communication and expression for effective engagement and learning opportunities for Indigenous students. Therefore, it is clear that a window of opportunity exists to use arts education in this capacity. I am not currently engaging in placement. Therefore, I have not had the opportunity to enter a school setting to observe how the arts might impact learning for Indigenous students. I do, however, work full-time at Cleveland Youth Detention Centre in Townsville. Within the detention centre environment, we work with a range of young people, both male and female, from ages 10 right through to 17. The centre has an established school on site that operates daily with regular classes, exposing the young people to learning opportunities in all of the key learning areas. Of course, arts education is one of those learning areas. On average, 85 to 90% of the young people residing at the centre are of Aboriginal and or Torres Strait Islander descent. I saw this as the perfect opportunity to witness arts education in action amongst my target group of students. Of course, being a future primary school educator, I focused on the 10 and 11-year-old students who'd be in grades 5 and 6. Over the course of my employment at CYDC, I have witnessed a variety of behaviours exhibited by students, of which some of the most common were refusal to engage or participate, aggressiveness, isolation and withdrawal, and physical and or verbal outbursts. Upon entering the Indigenous art class for the first time, a very different set of behaviours were on display. There was a willingness to participate, there was compliance with direction, and an obvious mutual respect established between the students and their teacher. The body of work they were focused on was themed around connectedness, and the teacher described the work as an opportunity for the students to portray what it means to be connected. The teacher explained to me how he approaches teaching the students at CYDC. He said that it is critically important to establish a safe, comfortable and friendly environment in which the students feel as though they can be themselves and not be judged. To achieve this, he promotes the notion of freedom of expression, upon which the students understand that they can interpret the themes and projects in a manner that makes sense to them and express that understanding in their own way. He went on to describe how this approach gives the students a sense of ownership of the program and helps develop their identity, which to Indigenous people, particularly those who are disengaged, is of the utmost importance. The next 3 slides contain some of the work the students in the art class completed that was linked to the theme connectedness. I questioned these students on their pieces and what they meant to them to gain some insight as to their thoughts and ideas with regards to the theme. This piece was done by an 11-year-old boy who described connectedness as depicted in his picture as himself being the tree in the middle, each circle of colour representing different people in his life, including friends, family, teachers, and support service workers. The roots represent his connection to the land. This painting was done by an 11-year-old girl. The circles in the middle are depictions of places with particular letters representing each of those places. They are clans that she is connected to. The white lines lead out to other places that life might take her, but are always traced back to the center. The handprints on the outside represent her 3 siblings and herself. The dots are different people in their lives. A 10-year-old boy did this next piece. He described himself in the picture and how he is connected to the land that he is standing on and all of the animals that live on the land. He said that the snake, goanna and kangaroo are his favorite animals and that he feels a connection with them. I followed several groups of students into other arts-based classes that had an Indigenous focus, one of which was an Aboriginal dance and didgeridoo playing class. They call the didgeridoo yigi yigi. I saw the same levels of engagement from those students as I did in the art class. I asked the class if they could tell me why they liked the cultural-based classes so much. One student said that it was because he felt that it was an important part of who he was, and he wanted to learn more about his culture. Another student described how he felt no shame in those classes. I asked him if he felt shame in classes such as literacy and numeracy. He said that he often did because he didn't always understand what he was supposed to learn. In an effort to draw conclusions between the research question and my observations, I spoke to the curriculum coordinator and behaviour support officer to gain some student data. Interestingly, they had already collated some data pertaining to behavioural trends in various classes across the day. What was more interesting is their strategic approach to scheduling classes for the students. They found that students were more likely to engage and exhibit more positive behaviour in classes after attending a cultural-based program such as art or dance. They used this information to inform what each student's learning schedule would look like. For me, this reinforced my earlier theories in relation to enhanced learning opportunities and the correlations that existed between my observations and conversations with the students. In summarizing my experience undertaking this assessment task and based on the research that currently exists, together with my personal observations, I can conclude that arts education is an effective means of engaging Indigenous students in learning. As a future primary school teacher, utilizing the arts in a multimodal type capacity is strongly evidenced as beneficial for student development in a variety of areas, and for me is an opportunity for an in-depth, authentic and meaningful connection to learning for students. Further, it is important to embed appropriate practices in the arts-based subjects, such as creating a safe space, encouraging all learners to be creative and innovative, foster an environment where students take ownership and provide constructive feedback that is not based on right or wrong. For Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students in particular, opportunities for participation in cultural-based arts forms a foundation for the discovery of their identity, instilling a sense of belonging and self-respect, but is also a means for self-expression. I hope you've enjoyed my presentation. Thank you for listening.